Good afternoon. I'm Councillor Nikki Brennan and I'll be chairing this hearing of the Subcommittee C of Licensing and Public Protection Committee of Birmingham City Council. Before we start, can I ask you all to please mute your microphones for the moment in order to improve the sound quality whilst I outline the procedure. Can you also please turn off your cameras, with the exception of the committee members, unless you are the person speaking. This is to reduce bandwidth. Committee members will have their cameras switched on throughout the hearing. Could everyone attending today's meeting please put their mobile phones onto silent and ensure that they are situated in a room or environment which is free from distractions or unnecessary noise from TVs or radios, etc. Thank you for that. I'm speaking slowly and clearly so everyone can follow. It is vitally important, for what I hope are obvious reasons, that those attending the meeting and making representations are able to hear me and members of my subcommittee and officers. Any distractions brought to my attention could result in the meeting being suspended temporarily or to another date and time under the regulations for these type of meetings. I also confirm that this is a public meeting and is therefore being live streamed on the City Council's website in order that the general public can view it. Members are reminded that they must declare all pecuniary interest and non-pecuniary interest arising from any business to be discussed at this meeting. If a disclosable pecuniary interest is declared, a member must not speak or take part in that agenda item. Any declarations will be recorded in the minutes of the meeting. Apologies have been submitted on behalf of Councillor Locke, and Councillor Straker-Weld was the nominated substitute member. So can I welcome you to this hearing for an application in respect of the transfer of premises licence and variation of designated premises supervisor for DC Minimark 138 Church Road, Yardley, Birmingham, B25 8UT. I'll begin with some introductions. As stated previously, I'm Councillor Nikki Brennan and I am chairing this meeting of the Licensing Subcommittee, and with me are other members of the subcommittee, Councillor Mike Ward.
Hello.
And Councillor Martin Straker-Welds.
Thank you, Chair. Hi.
Also present in the meeting are the following officers. Licensing Officer Shia Jesser.
Good afternoon, Chair.
Committee Manager Katie Townshend.
Good afternoon, Chair.
And Committee Lawyer Joanne Swimpelai.
Good afternoon, Chair.
So can I now ask all parties to identify themselves first, please, starting with the applicant, who I will just to confirm the applicant isn't in this meeting.
No, Chair.
So next, those making representations. So West Midlands Police.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mark Swallow, representing West Midlands Police.
Could I ask if any person making representations wishes to withdraw their representation at this stage of the hearing?
No, Chair.
I will assume that all parties have read and understood the Licensing Committee procedural rules sent out with the notice of today's hearing. Please note that given the nature of today's proceedings, I may at my discretion amend the procedural rules to reflect the fact that this meeting is taking place online, but wish to assure you all that any such amendments will not impact on the parties' right to a fair hearing. We'll be using the chat function in Microsoft Teams to communicate. One of the icons on your toolbar is a speech bubble. Click the speech bubble to go into chat. If you do not have access to chat function for any reason, please use the raise a hand function to indicate you wish to speak. That button is usually 4 from the right on the toolbar. You can also, of course, indicate verbally that you wish to speak at the appropriate time. Can you all now confirm that you have access to the chat facility by typing your own name now? And officers will also type their job title. The meeting will not proceed until you have done so. Please keep this chat column open for the entire duration of the meeting in order that everyone can follow the messages being posted in the chat. With the exception of subcommittee members, please keep your camera off unless you are the person speaking. If there are problems with bandwidth which cause difficulties with the sound, I may in my discretion ask everyone to turn their cameras off in order that the meeting can proceed with everyone being able to hear and be heard. Does anyone wish to make any preliminary points at this stage? If so, please indicate that you wish to raise a point by typing speak into the chat function or raise your hand function now. Thank you. I'll now briefly outline the procedure which will be following at today's hearing. Firstly, the licensing officer will present the report. Then the applicant and their representative will be asked to present their case, however they're not here. Then those making representations will be invited to make their case, which we're asking, can it be approximately kept to about 20 minutes? Can I ask all parties to speak as slowly and clearly as they possibly can, because the officers are taking notes by hand for the minutes, and the meeting is also being live streamed on the City Council's website. If at any time it is somebody else's turn to speak, please mute your microphone and use the chat function to communicate if necessary. Please note that members of the subcommittee will be able to ask questions at any stage, but we'll try to do so at the conclusion of each presentation. Cross-examination by the applicant and those making representations will not be permitted unless the members consider it appropriate. Where questions are raised by members of the subcommittee or by those present, please signify this using the chat facility set out on the right-hand side of the screen you are viewing this meeting on. The meeting manager will alert me if I do not notice messages in the chat. I will determine verbally or in writing on the chat facility the order in which questions are dealt with. Additionally, you may also seek to notify a question or point verbally in the usual way at the appropriate time. So at any point in the meeting, if you wish to speak, please type the word speak into the chat function and the meeting manager will ensure that we come to you at the appropriate moment. If at any point you cannot hear or are having problems with your internet connection, please use the chat facility to alert the meeting manager. The chair will then ask the person speaking to repeat what they've just said. It is therefore important that you use the chat function as soon as you are unable to hear the person speaking. It may well be that the problem is caused by people still having their microphones or cameras on, which creates interference. So I'll ask everyone again to mute their microphones and turn their cameras off, unless you are the person speaking. Could I point out that occasionally it may be necessary for the subcommittee to take legal advice, and at my discretion, I may ask all parties to wait in this meeting whilst members and relevant officers withdraw to take legal advice using a separate meeting within Microsoft Teams. We will then return to this meeting and continue. Please note that if at any time the live stream being broadcast on the City Council website fails, I will ask you all to mute your microphones and cameras and stop speaking until the live stream is restored. If at any time the meeting goes into private session, the meeting manager will pause the live stream. Once the private part of the meeting is over, I will ask the meeting manager to confirm that the live stream has resumed before we continue. At the conclusion of the hearing, I will invite all parties to make a brief closing submission, and I will stress that no decision will be taken until all the evidence has been heard. At the decision-making stage, the members and relevant officers will withdraw from this meeting in order to determine the decision. They will go into a separate Microsoft Teams meeting. In the event that the members need to clarify any point, you will be telephoned by the meeting manager. The members will then make their decision. Notification of the determination of the application will be sent out to all parties within 5 working days. So I hope that's reasonably straightforward. And with that, I will ask the licensing officer to present the reports, please.
Thank you, Chair. The reports relate to applications submitted by Sharif Nijad Abu Bakr on the 22nd of November 2021, which sought to simultaneously transfer the premises licence to himself and vary the designated premises supervisor to nominate himself as the DPS. As the application sought to have immediate effect since the time of the applications, Sharif Nijad Abu Bakr has been responsible for the provision of licensable activities at the premises and carrying out the role of a DPS, pending the determination of the application by this subcommittee. A copy of the applications are attached as appendices to each report. In line with statutory requirements, the applications were served on West Midlands Police, who have subsequently given objection notices to the applications, which are also attached as appendix to each report. A copy of the current premises licence is attached to Appendix 3 of each report. It should be noted that the premises licence to which these transfer and DPS variation applications relate was subject to a review hearing following an inspection of the premises by trading standards when the then licence holder was found to be in control of the premises and illicit and counterfeit products were found on the premises. A copy of the review hearing decision notice is attached to Appendix 4 of each report. Now, when carrying out its licensing functions, a licensing authority must have regard to Birmingham City Council's Statement of Licensing Policy and the guidance issued by the Secretary of State under Section 182 of the Licensing Act 2003. When holding a hearing to consider objection notices under Sections 44 subsection 5 and Section 39 subsection 3, a licensing authority is confined to consideration of the prevention of crime and disorder licensing objective in the Act. The two options which are available to you today are to grant the applications or to refuse the applications. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I'll now move on to representations from West Midlands Police.
Thank you very much, Chair. This application is made in relation to DC Mini Market, 138 Church Road, Yardley in Birmingham, postcode being B25 HUT, and it's an application to become a premises licence holder and designated premises supervisor. The applicant is Sharanji Najad Abu Bakr, and he is applying to be the designated premises supervisor and premises licence holder for that premises, to transfer those roles from the previous person, Mohammed Shikapur. Premises licence at the shop was revoked by Licensing Committee C on the 4th of August 2021. That was after application made by Birmingham Trading Standards due to counterfeit and illicit tobacco products being found on the premises. That was 107 packets of tobacco mixed between counterfeit and non-duty paid tobacco. At that hearing, the DPS was also removed by the committee, again Mr. Shikapur. West Midlands Police supported Trading Standards called for the licence to be revoked and also made representations at the hearing. Mr. Shikapur is currently appealing the decision by the Licensing Committee, and that is due to be heard at Birmingham Magistrates Court on the 6th of January 2022. Due to the fact that the premises licence has been revoked and the DPS removed, West Midlands Police have concerns that this application for the two transfers, which was submitted on the 22nd of November 2021, may not be all that it seems and may be a subterfuge. West Midlands Police are concerned that the current applicant may be just a figurehead, and that will mean that that the previous DPS would effectively still have control of the business and be in charge of what was going on. In order to allay those fears, West Midlands Police try to work with the applicant via his agent. So West Midlands Police made a request that either a signed lease or ownership of the premises, signed solicitors' letters or documents for the transfer of the business, or copies of money transfers between the parties, and a copy of the business rates and who has responsibility for payment of those rates were made available. That would be to show that this was a genuine transfer and the business had been transferred from the previous premises licence holder to the applicant here. Those documents were first requested on the 23rd of November 2021. They weren't forthcoming, so a reminder email was sent on the 1st of December 2021. Christopher Jones, licensing officer, then had a conversation with the agent for the applicant on the 2nd of December 2021, and he informed Mr. Jones that he was still awaiting any update from his client. Those updates have not been forthcoming, even up to this current day. As I'm sure will notice that the agent for the applicant is not present at the hearing, and they have parted company and he no longer represents them. I'm sure you can draw your own conclusions in relation to that. Obviously, that documentation that would prove that this was a genuine bona fide contract and was honest and above board has not been forthcoming to West Midlands Police and hasn't been presented before yourselves for examination. Similarly, the applicant also hasn't submitted themselves to cross-examination by yourselves by being here today. I would suggest to you that the reason for that is because this is not a genuine transfer of business to the new person, that the previous premises licence holder will still have considerable sway in the running of this business, because a genuine person would have produced that documentation, or indeed any documentation to show their good faith. Thank you, councillors.
Thank you very much. Councillor Straker-Wells, do you have any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, please, if I may. I think the suggestion that comes from what you just said is that if the transfer was genuine and above board, then the details that you sought should also be provided to demonstrate it is genuine and above board. Is it my understanding that such details would be relatively easy to come by and would not require an enormous amount of effort on the part of the applicant, but that the failure to provide those simply raise questions in your mind?
Yes, absolutely, Councillor. Thank you for that. Yes, the documentation has to exist for the transfer of the business to take place. If any of those documents don't exist, then that transfer doesn't take place and the business is still with the original owner. So those documents have to exist and would be easy for they could send a copy to West Midlands Police or indeed the council to show the good faith of the fact that that documentation existed and this was a genuine transfer. None of that has been done. In fact, no documentation has been sent. I think you can draw your own conclusions from that.
Thank you. Final question from me, Chair, if I may. You're suggesting it would be an act of faith on the part of this committee to do anything other than ensure that it has access to the legitimate documentation to prove that the transfer is in fact a correct one, given the history of this particular premises. Have I got that right?
Yes, that is what I'm suggesting. I'm saying that in relation to this sort of transfer, and we accept that after there is a revocation, there are often transfers of businesses to other people. That is normal. And the normal thing then is to ask for documentation to show that that is a bona fide transaction, to prove that the new owner has complete control of those premises. That is forthcoming in all cases, in my experience, unless there is a reason for it not to be, i.e. that it isn't a genuine transaction. So any decision to grant this would be an act of faith by the committee, not based upon any documentation that proves the good faith of the applicant.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Straker-Wells. Councillor Ward, do you have any questions?
No, I have no questions. Thank you, Chair.
I don't have any questions either. So would you like to make your closing remarks?
Yes, thank you, Chair. In summing up, I would say that this is an application for the transfer of a premises licence and a DPS to a new applicant. Because of the circumstances previously where there was a revocation, West Midlands Police have asked for documentary evidence to prove that this was a genuine, honest, bona fide transaction and that the applicant is the person who will have genuine control of this business. That documentation, although being requested and a reminder sent, has not been forthcoming. No reason has been provided to show why that hasn't been forthcoming, and I would ask you to not grant the licence, because that it leads you to believe that this is not a genuine transaction and that the previous owner will have significant interests still in the business, which would obviously be against the licensing objectives. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I will now ask all parties to leave the Microsoft Teams meeting, and the members, the committee lawyer and the committee manager will go into private session while the subcommittee makes its decision. You'll be notified of the decision of the subcommittee within 5 working days. So thank you for everyone's time today, and I will hope you all have a wonderful Christmas and a happy New Year. And can we stop the live stream now, please?